I just want to go through some of the points that we've already covered. In terms of Africa, I'm not going to go through all of the points. We went through it earlier on. Africa hasn't changed in the last 5 minutes, although it's probably got a little bit poorer because some of the funds have been misappropriated. But in terms of Africa, still the same. Let's have a look at Nigeria. Nigeria is a very, very interesting country. One of the reasons I say that is that you'll see just now that they have a huge population. In compared to South Africa, they're probably 4 times our size and slightly smaller in land size. So let's have a look at where they are. They split into 36 different states compared to South Africa having 9. And their economic hub is Lagos. Land size just under 924,000 kilometers. About 3% of Africa, so they're about a percentage lower than South Africa. But here's the problem, and I think one of the issues is that they never imported TVs from China. So they're sitting with a population of 192 million people, 4 times the size of South Africa's population. But what they have done fairly successfully is that they have, in comparison to South Africa, a relatively low unemployment rate, sitting at 14%. But one of the problems they have is that they've got over 500 ethnic groups. And that's always a very, very difficult thing to manage because expectations from all of those different groups is different. And managing that is not an easy task. I'm not sure what I've done here. There we are. Okay, just in terms of Nigeria, I just want to go back. Nigeria, surprisingly enough, is one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. Also perceived to be one of the most beneficial areas to set up business. But that comes at a price. And that price is something that puts me as a South African to shame. I think my Nigerian brothers have done a far better job than what we could ever have done. And before I fall down, I think I'm just going to sit down for a while, just so that you can absorb what's being said here. And remember, I'm an old man. I find it very difficult to stand up, but these Nigerians have done a great job. I don't want to go through all of these problems. The reason I put this up is that one needs to understand the cultures and the environment in Nigeria. Huge market, huge number of people, but there are a lot of people that are trying to make quick and easy money. I'm not going to go through all of them. They're there for you to read. It's a problem, and as long as you're aware of it, you can do business with them. Just going back to their challenges, I think it is fair to say that if you've got corrupt leaders, you're going to have problems. And one of the biggest problems that Nigeria has is it's a very, very wealthy country. And that wealth comes from oil reserves. But if you've got that temptation of that wealth, the net effect of that is that you end up having a lot of poverty, particularly with a population of 192 million people. Corruption. I think what I found interesting here is that I thought we in Africa were unique, that we were the only continent that had problems with corruption. But I think it's a worldwide phenomenon. And at the end of the day, it boils down to greed. And what's happened in Nigeria is that the leadership finds it extremely difficult not to be persuaded by backhand deals to create personal wealth. Just in terms of the macro environment, obviously one of the problems they have is that if you do become corrupt, and if you want to become wealthy as a government, and as individuals within that government, obviously you're going to set ineffective and poorly implemented policies to make it a little bit easier for you to feather your own nest. And that unfortunately has happened. The other area is that there's a lack of genuine competition. And the government tries to prevent competition because they're able to take what they need out of the economy. The other area is poor human development and the economic health of the nation. I mentioned that in South Africa, that is one of the ways in which Africa generally has kept the same people in power for as long as they've been, is that you manipulate the system, you keep the people semi-literate, and you do what I said we do in South Africa. They do it throughout Africa, and you keep the leadership in place. Sorry, I've done that again. Okay, just the local customs and tips. Generally, one of the issues is Nigerians like to bargain. They like to haggle, and that's the nature. That's the way they are. They end up back at the same price, but they spent half an hour talking around in circles. But that's what they do, and they do it pretty well. The other problem that Nigeria has got is that the infrastructure has not been developed the way it should have been developed. And that's a factor of bribery and corruption. And the problem is that you may have a warehouse that is able to import or able to manufacture, but how do you distribute the goods? Because there's no real infrastructure to do it. And that's one of the areas that they have to improve and work on, and they are currently doing that. We were talking about China. Nigerians are very similar. Nothing's done quickly. They like to meet with people. They like to take their time. They also are relatively trusting. They prefer to do deals with a handshake. But they also have to feel comfortable with you. And I want to share a very quick story with you. I sold a building in Johannesburg to a Nigerian. I knew he was a Nigerian, and he arrives with a briefcase. And the first thing I thought was full of US dollar notes, because that's what they deal in. So I said to him, I know you're from Nigeria. Is the cash in your briefcase? So he says to me, no, you whites in South Africa think that's all we do is deal in cash. No, it's not. It's got my contracts in it. I want to buy your building. So he'd prepared and he'd done everything. So I said to him, but don't we normally discuss things? He says, yes. That's why the briefcase will stay here for half an hour and you will talk to me. If we have a look at similar problems to what we have in South Africa, particularly with new businesses, is that companies are undercapitalized. Their biggest problem is that the banks are very restrictive in terms of funding. And where they do fund companies, particularly startup companies, the interest rates are exceptionally high. So the net effect is that very few people qualify for loans. And again, the business environment lacks basic infrastructure. Good, thank you very much.